Welcome everyone to a casted game for Age of Empires 4, and today spawning in the northeast corner of the map, playing in blue, we've got David Kim, also known of course as Papi Paw, playing as the French. And his opponent in the southwest, playing in red, we've got Give You Anxiety, playing as the English. Welcome everyone to Gorge. That's the map for today. Hope you guys are having a great morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Of course, depending where you are in the world. And this is a classic matchup, right from the beginning of Age of Empires 4, the English versus the French. You love to see it, GUA getting the early wheelbarrow, and on a map where there's not too much of a travel distance between the two bases. This could be an interesting one. You've got the French with the mobility with the Royal Cavalry, the Royal French Knights, and then you've got the English, which are a bit slower to get going onto the map usually. But when they do get a massive longbows and spearmen, maybe they could pose a big problem for the French. Obviously, we're kind of assuming a few things. We could see some crazy builds potentially. We shall see. Wonder if it will be the Council Hall opening. Will he go for the Abbey of the Kings to get a king nice and early here, GUA? Either way, stay tuned. We'll be finding out. Now, it's been a while since I've been casting Age of Empires 4. As you guys may know, I kind of took a little bit of a break. It wasn't really necessarily planned. It kind of just happened. But we are back now. Probably casting maybe every 3 days or so. I don't want to be overdoing it. Kind of would rather cast long term, but every so often, every 3 days or so, rather than just go crazy at it like I did before and then burn myself out. So yeah, hopefully we're getting a video out every 3 days. Probably the best games that I can find. It's a bit tricky at the moment actually, because there's a lot going on. There's the Red Bull Wallow Legacy, not Legacy rather, but the new one, El Renado, and that's going to be taking up a lot of the players' times. Or it has been during qualifiers at least. So I haven't been seeing too many great ladder games. Been a bit tricky, but we found one today. Papi Paw versus GUA. And I'm kind of curious to see how this has changed, right? Lots have changed since the release of the game. But what hasn't changed? The French going for the School of Cavalry. No real surprises there. Plenty of sheep being picked up, though, for the English, which is decent, because whilst the farms are cheaper, they do still need all the food they can get. But more importantly, probably would be best that they're denying the food off the French. Forward berries makes it a little bit tricky for food, in terms of the deer camp as well, further forward. But he's going to be trying to take it in nice and early, considering the forward position. Probably best that he takes it nice and early as soon as he can, whilst he can. It will be the Council Hall being built by the English. It's that kind of playstyle that we see GUA do actually. He's quite aggressive with many civilizations, but in particular the English. So I'm kind of excited to see what he can do with it. Going to be a bit of a while before they get up. Wheelbarrow coming in now for the French. Of course, the cheaper technologies work out quite nicely for them. Only 35 wood and 105 gold. A lot cheaper than your usual 50 wood and 150 gold. 125 gold rather, actually. That's the usual price, I believe. Yeah, with the wood lines being quite far back, obviously, through the base, it's a bit of a tricky one to get damage in nice and early. Once they do start chopping on through, it creates a bit of a distance between the town centre and the wood line. That could be a time to attack. Either way, the knight going to be probably queued up instantaneously. There's a couple of villages on gold here for GUA. It's kind of interesting. There's getting a bit of gold banked up. Maybe looking to get double broadaxe nice and early, and also enough for steeled arrow probably. I think those are probably the two important upgrades for the English in this situation. Steeled arrow, of course, adding in a bit more aggression, a bit more attack on those longbows. Definitely needed against the French. Especially if they're rocking out with knights. And of course, double broadaxe. Pretty important for the English economy. Heavily wood dependent. Having to spend wood on both the longbows and the farms, of course. The knight has been queued up, moving further forward. Everything is pretty far forward for the French, which makes it a little bit tricky. This is going to be a second town centre for Papi Paw. That economy is going to be wild, right? Because don't forget, the French town centre does make villages faster than the English town centres. And most town centres, in fact, from many of the civilizations. The question is, what can the knight hit reliably? Probably the gold. Might push the villages off of gold, but GUA might bring those villages off for gold soon anyway. Considering double broadaxe is already queued up. He's also getting horticulture. And he's almost going to have enough for steeled arrow as well once he does get a blacksmith, of course. Hasn't got that building just yet. Here comes the knight scout trailing on behind. Getting ready to attack. Longbows just camping out on the gold line just to make sure that knights can't trample on through. Does deploy the palings as well, so if it does try and make it through, it will be snagged. Can add in a barracks too, just for some spearmen most likely. But yeah, things definitely do have to be defensive in the initial stages. He's getting a couple of arrows out, and yeah, a bit of HP has already been taken off the knight. It's not too easy to pick off a villager at this situation. Nice play there by a GUA to keep his villagers alive and safe and secure. Yeah, second town center placed really close by to home actually. It's kind of surprising because, I mean, this is obviously a play style that a lot of civilizations are opting for. Placing a second town center closer to home, but the French, you typically associate them having a lot of map control nice and early, so I was kind of half expecting him to be a bit more adventurous with that, being able to secure resources out on the map, maybe boar, maybe the deer camp here. But instead, he's gone for a bit more of a safer approach. Not necessarily a bad idea, because English can start to pump out units, and if they do get a push out, it can be devastating if they're caught with that second town center location. Not the tankiest of buildings anymore. Only 2,500 HP. More importantly, not too many garrisonable spots anymore. He's now adding in an archery range as well. So it's going to be knights and archers versus longbows and spearmen. It's a matchup that we've seen very commonly in the past. We continue to see it now. It's in a double archery range, in fact. But certainly, what this means now with that second town centre, it makes it a bit tricky for GUA, because when he does go to the castle age, he's got a decision to make, right? Does he go for the King's Palace for a second town centre effectively? Does he go for the White Tower? Going up against two town centres, he's going to be lagging behind on the villager production and the economy. To be fair, even on one town centre each, he still would be lagging behind, of course. Possibly it has to be the King's Palace if he goes to the castle age, and that's a big if, because it looks like GUA is spending everything he's got and not got any villagers on gold. Which is kind of curious, right? So this is a bit of a rough spot, I think, just strategically, because if you're not going for castle age and you're up against two town centres, and you're not going for a second town centre yourself, then it means that you've got to be aggressive and do some damage. But GUA pegged at home just for now, at least. Just until it gets the static defences, maybe. Gets shored up and secured, potentially. He's going to go for the boar. Or GUA pulls the boar with the scout. He wants to take the fight, but only 5 villagers here, so he's going to have to mark this well, though the knight getting involved should be okay. There we go. Should sort it out with the knight. Knight just going to push away the scout for now at least, and down in the south looks like the English are going to look to take the boar themselves. That's a lot of villagers. It does have access to the deer camp as well, to be fair. So going to look for that double stack of food. It's pretty nice there. Lots of food to be gathered. Alright, actually got both upgrades there. Iron Undermesh and also Steeled Arrow for both for GUA. Iron Undermesh is in for the French. Makes it a little bit more resistant to those longbows. And in the north, he's expanding the economy. Pretty actually passive opening, actually, overall, all things considered. Maybe GUA is opting for a timing attack because he's floating a lot of wood, actually, incidentally. Kind of curious to see that. And getting arrow slits inside the outpost as well, just to protect the boar villagers. Only 5 of them there. GUA creating a bit of a playpen for himself. Understandably so, because of course you're always worried about those knights. And people are doing the same, actually, in fact. Yet another archer range. The third one of the game for the French is going to pump out those archers. And I don't hate it, because, you know, going up against mass longbows and spearmen, archers is not a bad shout. Especially when you factor in that they've got the faster movement speed. You can always look to dictate the terms of a fight. It can be tricky. If he takes out the spearmen as well, leaves the knights to do their work. Alright, looks like GUA maybe looking to try and put a bit of pressure on the right side. He's heading back though. The villager count really starting to escalate. Puppy brought 54 villagers to 37. And certainly, you know, GUA is pumping out units, but he's got to make a push soon before it gets out ecoed, right? Because if he does damage, that's one thing, but he's got to do enough damage. Puppy Paw being very methodical with how he expands his safety net. The outpost gets a couple of hits on the scout, but the scout should be able to get out of there. He does get out of there. He's actually adding in some horsemen, interestingly enough. Is that misclick? Typically expect to see knights, but it could be a way to save gold. Here's the aggression coming in from GUA now. Standing with the longbows, making sure the spearmen are on hand just in case knights dive on in. But yeah, GUA feels it's go time now. 12 minutes on the clock. Not a bad time to go for it, but it's got to do damage. Knight's about to dive in, but won't be able to get too much of a value because there are plenty of spearmen. Gets a couple of shots on those longbows on it. Trying to expand the network of castles. Bonus with the outpost. Spearmen diving on in. The archer's actually focusing on the longbowmen, which is probably the right move because only 2 knights to tank anyway. I don't know if the spearmen just A-click here because there's only a couple of knights here. I think he does now. He's going for it. The archers, though, picking them apart as they go. And no network of castles. This is a perfect time for Puppy Paw to take the fight. Like, this is the time. Without the network of castles, this fight is not as good here for GUA for sure. And Puppy Paw taking advantage of that fact. Spearman numbers still looking decent though, so knights can't charge in too easily, but they do try and get a couple of hits on a couple of spearmen. There's the network of castles bonus, but then as soon as that comes on in, look at that. Puppy Paw just retreats. He takes a really nice engagement. Nice trade after all, because ultimately this stage, the only thing that Puppy Paw really needs to do is just delay the game. He's pulling ahead on villager count for sure. Because the longer the game goes on, the greater the advantage that Puppy Paw gets with his economy. Well, gets a couple of longbows for free, or the formation there not too great for GUA. He's going to lose a couple, goes back into network of castles bonus, but it might not be enough. He's got plenty of numbers there, Puppy Paw. I think he just charges us down, and the problem is for GUA, the faster movement speed on the archers for Puppy Paw means he can chase it down if he wants to. Decides not to for now. We're waiting for a couple more knights potentially, and understandably so, because there aren't that many. To be fair, he's added in quite a few more spearmen now again. GUA military numbers not looking too good. Yeah, interesting game actually, strategically speaking. If you are playing as a French, you know, I know they're not as heralded as sort of the best civilization in the game, but if you play them to their strengths, which is that faster town center, it can really work out for you. It already puts pressure on your enemy to do damage, right? And the English aren't the fastest civilization to get going, so it kind of works out quite nicely for them. Spearman going to be looking to burn this down, but of course he's got arrow slits, which will certainly help. Archers need to be careful about knights trampling on in, but he's going to be grouping up together. Doesn't really take out the outpost, loses a couple of spearmen trying to do so, and that's a great result there for Puppy Paw. Didn't lose anything really. And all of a sudden now GUA can be struggling. Now where do you go from here if you're GUA? He's outnumbered, both in terms of economy and military. Yeah, certainly feels like GUA needed to make a decision earlier to either push on out, but it's tricky, right? Pushing up against a French 2-town center play with the town centers placed very conservatively. I guess that in a way kind of gives you a good insight into why people do that. Because if you did place a second town center further out, it'd be a little bit more easier to attack, right? But when they're consolidated like this, even if GUA was able to make a bigger push, a bigger headway, it's a lot more tricky to deal with 2 town centers so close to each other. Has got a bit of an army there on the west side, taking the fight here. The trouble is, the split army, whilst it is getting some value on the left side, and this position, he's going to lose everything most likely. Making some headway down here though. Longbows might get a pick off on a couple of those archers, but there is decent enough numbers to cover for that. Don't forget, defender's advantage works out really well for him too. And the village count now really escalating. Yeah, I guess it's interesting because despite the fact there's not that much walking distance between the two bases on Gorge, just because of the position of at least the wood line, you've got some protective resources. Makes it difficult for infantry-based armies like the English here to really challenge you. It's got a couple of man-at-arms sprinkled on in, but they are feudal age man-at-arms after all. And with this number of archers, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. As Puppypaw looking to try and pick off a couple of the reinforcements, Jiwei having to head back home, which is not a good sight if you're supporting him, because he is not going to be able to put up pressure, which he kind of needs in this situation. He's grouping up together. Man-at-arms will help, though, tank a little bit against the archers. It could potentially take one good fight, and that could be a way back into the game. After all, the English, you know, when they do take a good fight, it can snowball afterwards. But it's picking off a couple of units for free. Nice play there by Puppypaw. Doesn't have to really engage. Took a good fight. Network of Castles bonus is in play. But this is great if you're Puppypaw, just pinning his enemy back at home. He's landed a couple of knights as well, for good measure. That economy is looking incredible. Plenty of farms from the English, so he's keeping up food income, but everything else is lagging behind quite significantly. Wouldn't be surprised to see rams coming out for Puppypaw. He might even be thinking about going to the Castle Age, and once he does, it might be Castle Age into GG. Can't see a way back for the English if Castle Age comes in for the French. Does have an outpost on the gold. Knight's going to dive on in. Good number of man-at-arms, but there are just so many archers, and I think at this point, Puppypaw doesn't really mind engaging with this. It is not a big problem to take the fight, as long as he trades well. Looks like he's going to try and get out of the network of castles bonus area, though, understandably so, although that outpost will help with that. And he's going to go to the castle age with the Royal Institute, and he's going to try and preserve the army. And it does have the faster movement speed, so probably could just back away, and he's doing just that. And now GUA is going to have a really hard task on his hands, because Royal Institute going up quick time, and it means that the knights will be able to be upgraded very nicely as well, with bloodlines and whatnot. Royal Institute, a great landmark for the French for seeing out games just like this. It's a bit of a masterclass here from Puppypaw. There is that castle age. And Chue might be thinking, what do we do now? And it's understandable, a thought process. But yeah, pretty one-sided from this match, from this side, but it's quite a nice way to look at the game and break it down, the strategic options that both players have and how to leverage it. And Puppypaw has just done it so well. Really leaned on the fact that the French have a better economy. Got the second town centre close to home, so even if he was under pressure, he's a much better position to defend. And unfortunately, Jiwei wasn't able to break out quick enough. And of course, Puppypaw has taken advantage of some key fights, one in the middle in particular, when the English didn't have the network of castles bonus. That was a huge, huge fight to take. And it's almost like the Jiwei, I mean, he kind of had to almost, because the archers would have been able to chase him down, right? That's the value of having a movement speed army, well, a movement speed with a advantageous movement speed compared to your enemy. You can always dictate the terms of the fight, and it felt like Jiwei kind of had to fight. Couldn't really retreat because he's always going to be chased down. So it kind of got caught. It's often the way with the English games go, actually. You kind of often get caught, either as the English or the opponent, either one. It's often what determines the outcome of the game, and you feel like that fight in the middle really was the big decisive factor in this fight. That's a lot of knights now. Bloodlines coming on in. They are veteran knights as well, so it's going to be even more tricky here for Jiwei to hold this off. He's going to go for the white tower for defensive positions, but even if you know, the forcing this fight is probably the play here for Puppypaw. He's going to take it. He's got the veterancy on the archers as well, and the trades are going to be really well. And also, despite, you know, even if Puppypaw somehow doesn't win this fight, the fact that English had to go for the white tower means his economy is going to be lagging even further behind. And in fact, it probably won't even matter too much, because the white tower going up is only going to delay things a little bit. Because the army, a lot of it is going down now for GUA, down to 39 supply in terms of military numbers. And looks like Puppypaw just going to dive this on in. Only 20 units garrisoned inside the white tower, of course, that's all you can get. Now it's going to just wrap around the longbows. There aren't any spearmen really, mostly man-at-arms, and the knights just counter everything here at this point. He's going to do so many villagers, down to 42. He's killed 20 villagers so far. GUA, he's on the ropes, and yeah, surely from here, there is not going to be a way back. He's holding on for now, but he's lost his army down to 1 military count, and yep, the knights run havoc in the base. I'm sure it's just a matter of time before GG gets caught, but it's an interesting approach to this civilization matchup and shows how strong the French can actually be, by the way. There's been a lot of talk about how strong the English is, but you play it well, play it in a certain style, and Well, the French can certainly be made to work, and there it is. GG gets called. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and if you did, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. It's a different style of casting today, a bit more analytical, but I think the game kind of presented itself that way. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Take care, and see you next time.